Hi everyone, back to looking at basics of surface design or 2D design. In this video, we're going to look at line and how important line can be and the different ways of using lines to enhance your designs. So we're going to look at line in three different ways. We are going to go into point, line, plane. We're going to look at line types and line weights, and then we're going to look at communicative lines. Now, point, line, plane is a idea that everything in design is made out of points, lines, and planes. So point is just one kind of dot, right? Line is between two dots, and a plane is between three dots, if that makes sense. So if you remember from algebra or geometry or whatever math class that I can't remember, points, lines, and planes is kind of like what forms the two-dimensional world. Once you go into the fourth point, it may go into like 3D design, right? So, but that's another class. The simplest way of looking at it is you can use dots, you can use lines, and you can use shapes in a design to create something. Line types are different types of lines. Line weights are different thicknesses of lines. And then communicative lines are ways of using lines to communicate ideas. So we're going to start with point, line, plane. And we're just going to look at, and you can really just look at any design. So this piece of artwork is made with points. Every intersection of a line can be a point. Every location, every placement can be a point. You can also have literal points like small dots. And then you have lines, which are lines that create boundaries, that create contours, that create outlines. And then you have planes, which are like flat pieces of shapes that you can use in order to, you know, fill things in. So we have circles. We have lots of shapes here. So that's just like a really, you know, it's, you don't even need to really know this, but it's just good to know, to point it out, and to know that you can thoughtfully use points, lines, and planes into your design. All right, here we are looking at line types and line weights. We have contour lines, which are like boundaries. They're also kind of like outlines, I would say. So these are contour lines that form kind of like simple shapes that let us know the difference between different objects. Okay, then we have implied lines, which is a line that's created in our own mind. So in here, what the artist is doing is actually, this is a calligram, which is a artistic way of writing poetry. So the way that you write something is creating this shape. So the artist is just here writing some letters together, but it's actually making the outline of this horse, if you kind of see that, right? So our brain is actually putting all of this together and telling us that, hey, this is the shape of a horse. So those are implied lines that people create in their minds. Okay. Then we have line types and line weights. So types of lines, there are several types of lines. There are regular lines, just straight, uninterrupted lines. We have dashed lines, we have dotted lines. You know, this line is not exactly like a smooth line, but it's like a textured line. This is like another kind of like textured line. And then we have line weight, which is different thicknesses of lines. So if you notice, this line is a lot thinner than this line. These lines are a lot thinner than this line. This hurricane line is definitely very thick. So varying like types of lines that are using and different weights of lines that you are using can create a really interesting composition. Okay, and then this can also be applied to shape, right? So if you're looking at the shape of this person, it is made out of several little dots. So it's not just kind of like, you know, a contour line, right? It's more like all of these dots. This is a pointillism that's creating like shades and kind of like a illusion of three-dimensionality. And then you have like very simple shapes like this rectangle here is a very simple sort of shape. Okay, and it's filled in you know, almost very normally with a flat color. Okay, here's another example of line types and line weights. So this piece of digital art, the artist is using dashed lines, thicker dashed lines. So the idea is the line weight is varied. They're also using layering and transparency here in the background. As you can kind of see, the lines are transparent, they're overlapping each other. So again, that's another video. Look into layering and creating texture and transparency. So you'll notice that there's a lot of ideas going on here. We have point line plane going in here too. Like quite literally, we have a series of points here. We have lines. We have planes that are like simple shapes. So there's a lot of different kind of like stuff going on here. Just using like simple lines and varying the type of line and varying the thickness of the line, you are doing a lot. Here's another super thick line. Okay, and then we have communicative lines, which is more of like psychological effects of a line. So this is just some examples of communicative lines. There is definitely other ways that artists create lines, but here are some really simple ones. You have vertical lines. So in here, everything is kind of like up and down, even the way these ladies are standing. And usually vertical lines are a show of status, a show of power, and things of that nature. Okay, so if you want to show something that's kind of stable and powerful and it's making a big impact, you're gonna see some vertical lines. And you can see this in architecture as well. You'll see a lot of like columns and things like that that are vertical, that show like power and stature and stability. Then you have horizontal lines that you mostly find in landscape and other things like that. Horizontal lines create a feeling of calm and soothing and relaxation. Okay? Diagonal lines, which you might find in a lot of comic strips. As you can see, there are lots of diagonal lines, even the way this character's hand is going. And what diagonal lines show is action, okay? A lot of movement, a lot of action with diagonal lines, okay? So these are just some basic ideas that you can use to enhance your design. So if you want to show the idea of stability, of power, Use vertical lines. If you want to show something that's calm and soothing, use horizontal lines. And if you want to show movement and action, you can use diagonal lines to enhance that. And then we also have regular line versus irregular lines. So regular lines and irregular lines, there's of course different varying degrees between these, and it can get even more and more irregular. Usually regular lines mean stability, it's kind of soothing. There's a lot of alignment going on here. Things kind of make more sense, okay? It's organized. Irregular lines can show chaos and indecision and, kind of even though there's some regularity in here with like the repetition going on, but this is definitely more irregular than this piece right here, right? It's more chaotic. There's just more going on, and it can show emotions such as like anxiety or some sort of difficulty, where regular can show emotions like stillness, maybe prison, different things like that. So, you have to decide how you're using those lines to kind of communicate different ideas that you want to communicate, okay? So, of course, there are several other kinds of lines, but this should kind of get you started in thinking about how line and design interact.